Let me give you another example where you will end up with fake scaling. Unfortunate fake scaling. So take this as an example. If your organization is in business of copy pasting some, commercially available and in trend and in style methodology or an agile, so-called agile framework, you may end up with something like this. Well, let alone you take your organizational structure that is very vertical and flip it on the side and call it now a chapter, or you really are trying to create a community-like structure, but you end up retaining all of the problems and challenges of the original organizational structure. If that wasn't bad enough, you end up with a bunch of teams that are built from ad hoc groups, sometimes even represented by independent vendors. You staple them together and you call them now squads. Why squads? Well, because it's a trendy name. Because what is really a squad? Why not a pod? Why not a team? Well, just because it's a trendy name. And you shove these bunch of squads into what's so-called a tribe. And what's a tribe now? Well, it's another trendy name that we borrowed from this small music company that actually tells us not to do it, but we still copy and paste it. And now you have these bunch of groups, not really teams, working on the same huge body of work. We call it a tribe. Most likely, it used to be an old portfolio of stuff. Now we relabel it with a new term. And if we try to estimate this, we're not going to be doing anything different from what we have been doing for months and years. So this is really not a good way to, not a good way to scale. So we're talking about the underlying problem of scaling, because like we said, if we have a problem with estimating work and forecasting and budgeting work by one team, now we're at the level where we have maybe 6 times 5 times 4, 24 teams. Imagine the degree of inaccuracy and variability you're going to introduce in the system, right? So this cumulative estimation by these teams will be extremely, extremely inaccurate. And although on the surface it may look like you're playing with numbers and it all rolls up on a slide, look at these teams that roll up into this large box called the tribe. Under the surface, it's really not reliable. Here's another example of very unfortunate organizational design and attempt to scale. And by the way, the whole merit of scaling is not a good one, because we shouldn't be trying to scale. We should be actually descaling. I'm going to say a little more on that just in a bit. So you got a bunch of teams, right? And typically, if you want a short cycle time and short feedback loop between a team and a customer, it should be a straight line, right? They should be very close. Proximity should be very high degree of proximity. But what if you got these, arbitrary blue boxes that I'm drawing around my teams, managers and conductors and coordinators and rags and metrics and KPIs and a bunch of siloed organizational structures, and now you got the multiple layers of translation. And you may feel and sense some elements of irony to this, right? I'm not naming what this says, but you can probably sense it. And by the way, this is just version 348.54. There will be more coming. You will be paying for every single version that comes out. So with this kind of layered structure, the degree of convolution and the length between real customers and real doers, real teams, is extremely long. So this is a longer shot for me to explain. Now try to explain to this customer why they ended up with these estimates and forecasts. Budgeted forecasts would be based on those. Well, this information went through so many different channels of translation and through so many different layers of interpretation. How accurate could that be? I mean, one thing, you go straight up and you talk directly to your customers and users. And the other thing, when teams estimate and things get rolled into projects, programs, and portfolios and get fudged and numbers change so badly that you end up with something that's extremely not reliable. So, of course, cumulative estimation by these teams is not going to be too accurate. Oh, and by the way, just as an FYI, with these kind of complex frameworks and scaling approaches, what you end up seeing down below are really not feature teams. Feature teams would be cross-functional, cross-component, et cetera, et cetera. Those would be most likely just component teams that work very ad hoc and very independently, and obviously they estimate independently too.